Up in Smoke, Season 7, Episode 9 Breakdown Season 7, Episode 9 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, titled Up in Smoke, drops the team into one of the property's most stubborn mysteries, while simultaneously throwing a completely unexpected curveball from across the ranch. This episode guide walks through everything that went down at Homestead 2, and more importantly, what showed up somewhere else when nobody was watching. If you've been following Season 7 closely, you already know this has been a season defined by escalation. Week after week, the team has pushed harder, gone further, and used more sophisticated tools than ever before. Episode 8 gave us rocket launches directly into the Triangle's airspace, and came back with hard data that reframed years of aerial anomaly sightings. It was a landmark moment for the investigation, the kind of breakthrough that gives a team real momentum, heading into the next phase of their work. And heading into Episode 9, that momentum is very much present. The team arrives at Homestead 2 with clear intent, a focused plan, and enough confidence of recent discoveries to believe they're finally getting traction on some of the ranch's longest-standing mysteries. What they don't account for, because how could they, is that Skinwalker Ranch has never been particularly cooperative with focused plans. Homestead 2 is not a new location for longtime viewers, but it's one that has never fully given up its secrets. The area has been the site of repeated anomalous readings over the course of the show's run. A place where instruments tend to behave oddly, where visual phenomena have been reported more than once, and where the general atmosphere carries the kind of weight that even the most scientifically minded team members have struggled to dismiss entirely. It occupies a specific role in the ranch's overall geography of strangeness, distinct from the Triangle, distinct from the Mesa, distinct from the various hotspots that have drawn the team's attention at different points throughout the series. Homestead 2 has its own personality, its own pattern of behavior, and the team comes into this episode with a specific strategy for drawing it out. The approach they've settled on is suggested right there in the episode title. Smoke. Using smoke as a visualization tool is a technique with real scientific grounding. When you introduce a controlled volume of visible smoke into an environment and watch how it moves, you can learn a great deal about airflow, pressure differentials, and the presence of forces that might not otherwise be detectable. If there's something physically present at Homestead 2, something generating an energy field, an electromagnetic disturbance, or even just an unusual atmospheric pressure pocket, visible smoke moving through that space might reveal its shape, its boundaries, and its behavior in a way that pure instrument readings can't fully capture on their own. It's the kind of approach that bridges the gap between hard data and visual evidence, giving both the team and the viewers watching at home something concrete to observe in real time. The preparation for the smoke operation reflects the team's growing methodological sophistication. This isn't a casual experiment. The team is deliberate about where they introduce the smoke, how they document its movement, and what instruments they have running simultaneously to correlate any unusual visual behavior with underlying sensor data. The goal is to create a multi-layered picture of whatever might be happening at Homestead 2, using the smoke as the visible layer that ties together all the instrument readings into something more tangible and interpretable. That kind of layered, cross-referenced approach has been a hallmark of how this season has operated, and it's on full display here. Before the smoke operation gets fully underway, the team takes time to review what's already known about Homestead 2, and why this particular location warrants the focused attention it's getting in this episode. Past investigations have flagged the area repeatedly as a site of recurring anomalies, but the nature of those anomalies has often been frustratingly vague. Sensor spikes that appear and vanish, equipment that behaves differently in this area than it does elsewhere on the property. Eyewitness accounts from people who've spent time near Homestead 2, describing a general sense of unease or disorientation that they struggle to attribute to anything specific. None of this amounts to a clean, definitive case for a particular explanation. But taken together, it builds a pattern that the team has consistently returned to, as worth investigating more deeply. There's also the historical dimension of Homestead 2 that adds weight to the investigation. The ranch's history stretches back through multiple generations of ownership, and Homestead 2 represents one of the older sections of habitation on the property. That history matters because it raises questions about what people who lived and worked in that area might have experienced over the years. Questions that feed directly into the broader mystery of whether whatever is happening at Skinwalker Ranch is a recent phenomenon, or something that has been present for a very long time. The team is aware of this history going into the episode, and it shapes how they approach the investigation. Treating Homestead Two not just as a patch of land with unusual sensor readings, but as a location with a layered human story that might be relevant to understanding what's happening there. When the smoke operation begins in earnest, the early stages produce exactly the kind of cautious optimism you'd expect from a team that's well practiced at managing their expectations. The smoke moves through the environment in ways that are mostly consistent with prevailing wind conditions and the general atmospheric state of the area. The team watches carefully, instruments running, cameras rolling, looking for any deviation from what normal airflow would produce. For a little while, there's nothing obviously unusual, and there's a quiet acknowledgement among the team that not every attempt produces immediate results. That kind of patience and willingness to sit with inconclusive early data is part of what gives the show its credibility. And then things start to get interesting. The smoke doesn't just drift along predictably. At a certain point, it begins behaving in ways that don't match the environmental conditions. Movement patterns that seem to defy the prevailing wind direction. Unusual pooling or dispersion behavior in specific zones that the team hasn't flagged as structurally significant. The kind of visual evidence that makes everyone in the vicinity stop what they're doing and pay close attention, because what they're seeing with their own eyes doesn't align with what basic atmospheric physics would predict in that environment. These moments are exactly what the operation was designed to capture, and the team's reaction in real time, that combination of excitement and careful restraint that comes from years of investigating claims that turned out to have mundane explanations, is one of the more compelling things to watch in this section of the episode. The instruments, running alongside the smoke operation, add an important second layer to what's being observed. As the smoke begins its unusual behavior, the sensors around Homestead Two start logging readings that correlate with the visual anomalies in ways that are difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Electromagnetic fluctuations spiking in areas where the smoke is behaving, and strangely, pressure readings that don't match the ambient atmospheric conditions. Data that, taken on its own, might be chalked up to instrument error or environmental variability, but which aligns too precisely with what the team is watching with their own eyes to be easily written off. The convergence of visual observation and instrument data is exactly what the team was hoping the smoke approach would deliver. And in these moments, it's delivering convincingly. What's particularly compelling about this segment of the episode is the way it forces the team to slow down and really watch. So much of the investigation at Skinwalker Ranch involves interpreting data after the fact, reviewing sensor logs, analyzing footage, cross-referencing readings from different instruments to build a picture of what happened. The smoke operation is different because it's happening live, in real time, right in front of the team's eyes. There's no post-processing involved, no waiting to see what the data shows after the fact. What the smoke does, it does in plain sight, which means the team's real-time reactions and interpretations are as much a part of the scientific record as any of the instrument readings. The discussion that follows the most significant moments of unusual smoke behavior is detailed and thoughtful. Team members with different scientific backgrounds bring different frameworks to bear on what they're observing, and the back and forth between those perspectives produces a richer analysis than any single person's interpretation would. Some lean toward electromagnetic explanations, pointing to the correlated sensor data as evidence that an energy field of some kind is disrupting the smoke's movement. Others focus on the pressure readings, wondering whether there's a geological component, something happening beneath the surface of Homestead Two, that's creating localized atmospheric effects above it. Nobody is jumping to the most dramatic possible explanation, but nobody is dismissing what they've seen either. That balance of open-minded curiosity and scientific discipline is exactly what keeps this show grounded, even when the phenomena it's documenting feel anything but. Then comes the moment that genuinely shifts the episode's direction. While the team is fully focused on Homestead Two, working through the implications of what the smoke operation has revealed. Word comes in that instruments in a completely different part of the ranch have started logging anomalous readings. Not minor fluctuations, not the kind of background noise that the team has learned to filter out from years of continuous monitoring across the property. Significant readings, the kind that in any other context would immediately pull the entire team's attention. The kind that, on a less monitored property, might go unnoticed entirely and leave no record that anything out of the ordinary had occurred. The team's reaction to this news is fascinating to watch. There's a genuine moment of tension as they weigh the options. Do they pause the Homestead Two operation, which is currently producing its most interesting results, to investigate what's happening elsewhere? Do they split up, sending part of the team to the new location while others continue the smoke work? Or do they try to manage both situations simultaneously from a distance, relying on remote instrumentation to capture what's happening at the new location, while the full team stays focused on the work already underway? These aren't just logistical decisions. They reflect deeper questions about how to prioritize limited investigative resources in an environment where seemingly significant things can happen in multiple places at once. The decision they ultimately land on reflects the team's accumulated experience and their understanding of how the ranch tends to behave. Splitting up becomes the practical choice, because the readings coming in from the other location are too significant to ignore, and the Homestead Two operation is too far along to abandon entirely. Watching the team divide their attention and resources in real time, with both lines of investigation running simultaneously, creates a kind of split-screen tension that's different from the more linear structure of most episodes. You're watching two things unfold at once, connected by the fact that they're both happening on the same property at the same time, and the question of whether that timing is coincidental hangs over every scene. The new location generating anomalous readings is not one of the ranch's established hotspots, which makes what's happening there even more striking. Part of what gives Skinwalker Ranch its enduring mystique is the way it seems to distribute its strangeness across the property in ways that resist easy mapping. The Triangle, Homestead Two, the Mesa, and various other areas have all earned their reputations through repeated incidents and documented readings, but the ranch has also consistently produced anomalies in locations that weren't previously flagged as particularly significant. This is one of those moments. An area that hasn't been a major focus of the investigation suddenly starts producing data that demands attention, and the team has to respond on the fly, without the benefit of whatever preparation they might have done if they'd planned to investigate this spot in advance. What the responding team members find when they reach the new location adds a significant new dimension to the episode. The readings that triggered the alert are confirmed in person, backed up by additional instrument checks that rule out the most obvious possibilities for false positives. Something is genuinely happening here, and its emergence while the main team was engaged at Homestead Two creates an obvious question that none of the investigators are ready to answer definitively. Is this coincidence, or is there some kind of relationship between the activity at Homestead Two and whatever is now manifesting here? The ranch's history is full of instances where strange events seem to cluster together in time, separate incidents in separate locations that nonetheless felt connected in ways that defied easy explanation. Whether this is another example of that pattern, or simply two unrelated phenomena that happen to occur on the same day, is something the team wrestles with openly. This tension between coincidence and connection is one of the more intellectually interesting threads running through Up in Smoke. The show has always walked a careful line between presenting genuinely mysterious phenomena and avoiding the leap to unverified conclusions, and this episode navigates that line as skillfully as any in recent memory. The team is clearly aware that the simultaneous emergence of anomalies in two different locations is precisely the kind of thing that could feed into the more dramatic narratives that surround the ranch's reputation. They're also aware that responsible scientific investigation requires holding those narratives at arm's length until the data actually supports them. Watching that discipline in practice, even as the evidence piles up in genuinely suggestive ways, is part of what makes the show worth watching for viewers who come to it with a serious interest in the underlying mysteries, rather than just the spectacle. Back at Homestead 2, the smoke operation continues to produce results worth paying attention to. With part of the team now deployed elsewhere, the investigators who remained are working to document as much as possible before conditions change. The anomalous smoke behavior that captured everyone's attention earlier hasn't entirely subsided, and some of the most detailed observational work of the entire operation happens in this phase, when the team has fewer distractions and is able to focus entirely on what the smoke is doing and what the instruments are recording in parallel. The data being captured during this stretch becomes some of the most compelling evidence from the entire Homestead 2 operation, precisely because it's so carefully documented. There's a sequence during this phase where the smoke behavior becomes pronounced enough that even the most cautious members of the team are visibly struck by what they're watching. The movement patterns that defy simple atmospheric explanation aren't fleeting or ambiguous. They persist long enough to be thoroughly documented from multiple angles, with multiple instruments running, in conditions that the team has already established as inconsistent with normal weather-driven airflow. This isn't a moment that requires a leap of faith to find significant. It's the kind of thing that, when you watch it unfold, produces a very straightforward reaction. That isn't what smoke should be doing in these conditions. The analysis of this particular sequence becomes a focal point of the team's discussion in the episode's latter half. Multiple explanations are floated and evaluated. Instrument readings from the moments surrounding the most unusual smoke behavior are examined in detail, with specific attention to the electromagnetic and pressure data that correlated with what the team observed visually. The connections that emerge from this analysis don't lead to a single clean conclusion, but they do significantly narrow the field of plausible explanations. Several of the more mundane possibilities are effectively ruled out by the data, leaving a smaller set of explanations that are harder to categorize neatly, and that require engaging seriously with the possibility that something genuinely unusual is happening at Homestead 2. The team handling the new anomaly location is meanwhile building its own body of observations. What they're dealing with is different in character from what's happening at Homestead 2, which makes the question of a connection between the two events both more interesting and harder to answer. If both locations were showing the same type of anomaly simultaneously, you might more easily write it off as a range-wide environmental condition of some kind, a weather pattern or a geological event affecting the entire property at once. But the fact that the two locations are producing different types of readings, different signatures, while still triggering at the same time, creates a more complex puzzle. Either there's something connecting them that operates through some mechanism the team hasn't identified yet, or the ranch is simply capable of serving up multiple unrelated phenomena at the same time, which is its own kind of remarkable statement. As the episode builds toward its conclusion, both threads of the investigation are brought back together in a broader discussion among the full team. The data from Homestead 2 and the data from the new location are laid out side by side, compared, and analyzed for any patterns of correlation or divergence. This is the kind of synthesis work that often happens in the final act of a strong episode, when the individual pieces of evidence collected throughout the hour are assembled into whatever picture they collectively support. In this case, the picture that emerges is genuinely intriguing without being neatly resolved, which is about as honest a representation of where the investigation stands as the show could offer. The question of whether the activity at the new location was somehow triggered by or related to what the team was doing at Homestead 2 receives serious consideration. This is a thread that runs through many serious discussions of Skinwalker Ranch phenomena. The idea that the ranch doesn't just passively host anomalies, but may in some sense respond to the presence and activity of investigators. It's a concept that's difficult to test scientifically, but it's also one that the team can't dismiss out of hand, given the timing of what occurred in this episode. The fact that strange activity erupted in a previously quiet part of the ranch at precisely the moment the team was most intensively engaged at a different location is exactly the kind of circumstantial evidence that keeps this particular line of inquiry alive. It's worth considering what the Homestead Two operation itself might have contributed to the broader understanding of that location, regardless of what happened elsewhere on the ranch. The smoke experiment was not a failure just because it produced more questions than answers. Quite the opposite. The visual and instrumental data gathered during the operation fills in significant gaps in the team's understanding of what's happening at Homestead Two, even if those gaps are replaced by new ones. The specific areas where smoke behaved anomalously now have coordinates and correlated sensor data attached to them, making them targets for more focused investigation in future episodes. The methodology itself has been validated as capable of revealing phenomena that pure instrumentation might miss, suggesting it could become a regular part of the team's investigative toolkit going forward. The unexpected emergence of anomalies elsewhere on the ranch during the same operation adds a layer of complexity to the episode that elevates it above a straightforward, single-location investigation. Up in Smoke isn't just an episode about what the team found at Homestead 2. It's an episode about the nature of investigation at Skinwalker Ranch itself, about the way this property consistently resists the team's attempts to contain their focus to a single location or a single phenomenon. Whether that resistance is a property of the ranch's genuine strangeness, or simply a reflection of how complex and varied the phenomena here are, the practical effect is the same. The team never quite gets the clean, linear investigation they plan for, because the ranch always seems to have something else to add. That unpredictability is ultimately one of the core appeals of this show for its audience, and Up in Smoke leans into it honestly. Rather than shaping the episode's narrative toward a clean arc with a clear resolution, the production lets the genuine messiness of the investigation show through. Two things happened simultaneously, in two different locations, and the team had to respond in real time with limited resources and no preparation for the second event. The result is an episode that feels authentically investigative, rather than staged or shaped for maximum dramatic convenience. That authenticity is something the show's most dedicated viewers have come to rely on, and it's very much present here. For newer viewers, Up in Smoke also works as a kind of introduction to the multi-dimensional nature of the ranch as a subject of investigation. So much of the casual coverage of Skinwalker Ranch reduces it to a handful of dramatic incidents and a reputation for UFO sightings. What this episode illustrates is that the reality of investigating the ranch is far more textured and demanding than any highlight reel would suggest. It requires constant monitoring across a large geographic area, the ability to respond quickly and adaptively when something unexpected emerges, and the scientific discipline to keep gathering and documenting data even when the situation is pulling the team in multiple directions at once. The team demonstrates all of those qualities in this episode, and the episode is better for showing it. As the hour winds toward its close, both the Homestead 2 findings and the new location data are submitted to the same process of preliminary analysis that will feed into the team's ongoing investigation. Neither set of results is treated as definitive, because at this stage of the work, drawing firm conclusions from a single episode's data would be premature. What the team has instead is a significantly enriched picture of two separate locations on the ranch, connected by the timing of their anomalous activity and by the team's determination to document whatever the ranch decides to show them on any given day. That enriched picture becomes part of the cumulative case that the entire season is building, brick by brick, toward whatever broader understanding the team is working to achieve. There's a quieter moment near the end of the episode that's easy to overlook, but worth paying attention to. A couple of team members, reviewing the day's data in the aftermath of the dual location situation, reflect briefly on the sheer scale of what they're trying to understand. Skinwalker Ranch is a large, complex property with a history that stretches back further than the current investigation. The anomalies it produces aren't localized to one spot or one category of phenomenon. They're distributed, varied, and seemingly capable of emerging anywhere, at any time, under conditions that the team hasn't been able to predict with any reliability. That acknowledgement coming from people who've dedicated years of their professional lives to this investigation carries a weight that's easy to underestimate, but hard to entirely shake once you've noticed it. Closing out this breakdown of Season 7, Episode 9, Up in Smoke stands as one of the more layered and genuinely interesting episodes of the season. It doesn't deliver the kind of single-moment breakthrough that made Rocket Men so memorable in the episode just before it, but it offers something different and in many ways more representative of what serious investigation at this ranch actually looks like. It's messy, it's complicated, it refuses to stay within the boundaries the team sets for it, and it produces more threads to follow than it resolves. That's not a weakness. That's a completely accurate portrait of what it means to chase answers on a property that has been generating questions for longer than most of its current investigators have been alive. Where the season goes from here, with both the Homestead 2 data and the new location data now in hand, will be worth watching closely. The team has demonstrated this season that they're willing to be bold, to try new approaches, to put their instruments directly into the phenomena rather than observing from a safe distance. Up in Smoke adds to that picture by showing they're also capable of adapting in real time when the ranch refuses to cooperate with their plans. That combination of boldness and adaptability might be exactly what this investigation needs to finally make meaningful progress on questions that have resisted answers for far too long. Whether the answers are coming or not, the team is clearly not done asking. And for viewers who followed this journey from the beginning, that commitment is more than enough reason to keep watching.